Talking like a senator right now. Just stick with the question.
Well, that's that part of it. And the second question.
Immigration?
On immigration, look, I am a big supporter of immigration. I believe in legal immigration. I think the government should make it legal or easier for people to legally come to this country. But what I don't want is people to come to this country and go on the dole. I don't want people coming here and going on welfare or food stamps or whatever it is. I want people working. Either they can work for somebody else, they can start their own business. So maybe if we can do something like, you want to come into the country, fine. You have no right for 5 or 10 years to any of these social programs. You can't get on this. So if you can't find a job, then go home. But if you can find a job, if you can do something productive, then you can stay.
And then the last one. Could you say something on the positive side and the negative side about Rob and Linda? I mean, what good ideas do they have, and what would you do different from them?
Well, look, as far as Rob Simmons is concerned, I mean, I've met him several times. I respect the fact that he's been in the military, that he's been in the CIA. I think he has an interesting background. But, as far as his 6 years in, the House of Representatives, he was part of the problem. And I don't see how he's now part of the solution. I know that a lot of the things that Rob Simmons says, I completely agree with. I mean, he's saying a lot of the right things. But to me, I think that's the politician in him. He knows what, which way the wind is blowing, and he knows what he needs to say. But, if he goes to the Senate, he's going to be just like any other, liberal Republican that's in office, and even some of the conservative Republicans. They're not doing anything. I think we really need the equivalent of a revolution in the Republican Party. I think they've led us in the wrong direction, and I think somebody needs to go there and really work to change it. I just don't think Rob Simmons is the guy to do it. I think if he gets to the Senate, he's going to be happy that he's there, and he's just going to fit in. And he's not going to make waves, and he's just not going to do what we need to do, even if he actually believes the things that he says. But I don't know that he does, because again, I still think he's a politician, and that's what politicians do. They figure out what people want to hear, and then that's what they say. As far as Linda, I think, her and her husband, I think, did a very good job, growing a business, whether you think it's, a business that's socially redeeming or not. There are a lot of people that apparently like it. And they did it very well. They made a lot of money. But, Linda McMahon, I think she's right in a lot of things that she says, in that we don't need a career politician. We need a business person. We need an entrepreneur. We need an outsider who hasn't been part of this corrupt process. I agree 100%. I just don't think that she's the person for the job. I mean, yeah, she's a business person, but, it's show business. I mean, she's a wrestling promoter. I mean, that's fine, but we have a serious economic problem in this country, and I don't think I think it's outside her realm of understanding. And I don't think that if she gets to the Senate, again, I think she's just more likely to sit in. I think she wants the prestige of the office. I think that, she thinks it would be nice that maybe she'd get more respect in Greenwich if she was a senator. And I think she's a nice lady, and maybe her heart's in the right place. But again, I just don't think that she really has the understanding or the ability to convince the other side. I mean, imagine Linda McMahon is going to get there, and she's going to try to tell everybody else what to do. It's, well, why? How do you know? I mean, what's your back? Why should I listen to you about economic problems? What do you know about it? So I just think that of the people who are running, I'm the most likely to actually get this job done from my perspective. Because I actually think that we are on the verge of an economic collapse. I mean, this is it. This is a major catastrophe that's coming. And somebody needs to be in Washington to make sure that, A, we don't repeat this mistake again, because we can't afford it. And to let people know what we've done wrong and what has to be done. And get them to understand, when somebody from Wall Street comes to Washington and says, we've got to bail out this firm, and I can convince them, no, we don't. That we would have been better off letting them fail. We didn't have to bail out all these Wall Street firms. We could have let them go bankrupt. It would have been better. We didn't have to bail out General Motors. We didn't have to bail out Chrysler. The country would have been better off if we let them fail. The automobile industry would have been better off had we let them fail. Somebody has to explain to the other senators why capitalism works. I don't know that Linda or Rob actually understand it.
Thank you.
Dominic, what do you got?
A statement I like to make leads into a question. I'm going to say this, I don't think you're the type of person to say I followed all the way back to your father's book 25 years ago. But anybody in this room, if you want, go to your computer and you punch in Peter Schiff on YouTube, or Peter Schiff was right, you're going to see years of what this man's been saying. I followed him. It's all come true. It's true. Now, Rob Simmons created the problems that we live with today, running against you. What's the first 3 things that you think you can do down here, you think is the most important things to help change the tide in this country and the economy to get us back on the right road, Peter?
Well, the first thing we got to do is stop spending. We can't spend money we don't have, and when you're in debt, the solution isn't to accumulate more. You have to earn your way out of debt. We have to save and produce our way out of this hole. We can't keep digging it deeper. So I want to do everything I can to stop the government from spending money. I think the first thing I can do, they just voted to increase the debt ceiling by $2 trillion. And the crazy thing is, we're going to hit that ceiling in a year. That's how much money we're borrowing. What I want to do is get to Washington, and the first thing I want to filibuster is the increase in the debt ceiling. I mean, what's the whole point of having a ceiling if every time you hit it, they raise the ceiling? I want a ceiling. I want a real ceiling that can't go up. I want to do whatever I can to stop that debt ceiling from being raised and force the government to cut spending. You know, they think that, you know, we're going to. They said we can't cut spending in a recession. If it's a recession, that's why we need to cut spending. We're broke, right? How can we spend more when we're already broke? A real stimulus would be to shrink government so that we don't have this giant burden on our backs. So, you know, when times are good, we can afford big government. We'd be better off without it, but we can afford it. When times are tough, we can't. We got to get rid of it. So the first thing is to stop the spending. Then I want to try to get the government out of all these industries that it shouldn't be in, such as housing. You know, we should just collapse Fannie and Freddie. Why is the government guaranteeing 96% of all mortgages? It makes absolutely no sense. People should not be buying houses with government guarantees. You should buy a house that you can afford. And if you don't have the money to pay cash, and if you can't convince a private bank to lend you money based on your own creditworthiness and your own down payment, then don't buy it, or buy something less expensive. We can't have all these subsidies. The government is involved in all sorts of things that it shouldn't be involved in. So that we got to get rid of that. And then, if we can cut enough spending programs, which we need to do, we need to reform the tax code. We need to eliminate as many taxes as we can, especially taxes on income. We don't want to tax people for earning money. We want to tax them for spending money. Because when people are earning money, society benefits. If somebody goes out and earns millions and millions of dollars and then just invests it, puts it in the bank, we all benefit. That grows the economy, that increases production, that creates jobs. Why do we want to destroy that? Why do we want to take away the seed capital that grows the economy? It's when the wealthy are spending their money that we can tax them, because that's when they're enjoying their wealth. When they're reinvesting it, they're making it available to the entire country. Everybody benefits from capital accumulation. So those are the three things that we got to work on.
What else I got out there? Oh, come on. Whoa.
You actually did a pretty good job answering some of these questions before I even had to ask them. But I'll ask them to you all together, and you can break them up. Social issues. Where do you stand on homosexual marriage and abortion? And do you think the government's role in those ought to be taken away?
Why don't we do one at a time?
Okay, we do one at a time.
Yeah, as far as those particular social issues, the way you describe them, I don't think the federal government should be involved in those issues because they're not federal issues. Again, there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that mentions that the federal government has the right to define what marriage is or what it isn't, or on abortion. It's the Constitution is silent. And the way our Constitution works, if the federal government isn't specifically authorized to do something, then it can't do it. And so I think these are all state issues. But the way it might impact people in this room, for example, the federal government should not be funding abortion. The federal government can't spend money promoting abortions. They can't give people money to have abortions. At the same time, the federal government can't interfere with the states in what they want to do with respect to abortion. Whether they want to impose restrictions or not is up to the states, and it's not up to the federal government to tell the states that they can or cannot do that. The same thing, with marriage. I mean, it's not up to the federal government to define what marriage is, but I think what the federal government can do is if one state wants to define marriage in a way that like Connecticut does, and another state doesn't define it that way, to not force that state to recognize that marriage in a different state if it's in conflict with their own laws. But in general, these social issues, whether it's drugs or all these things that should be regulated on the state level. It's not a federal responsibility. It's not a federal power. And one of the things I do want to do when I get to Washington is try to educate our leaders about what the Constitution